call is very important to us. Hey all, welcome. I will have a script here in seconds. Okay,
We're good to go when you are.
welcome to the January 28th, 2025 meeting of the Youth and Education Committee. My name is Kevin O'Keefe and I am the interim chair of the committee. Tonight we are joined by Community Coordinator Brian Lafferty. This meeting is called to order at 6:33 p.m. As a reminder, New York State law requires all committee members who are not able to attend the meeting in person to have their cameras on and their first and last names displayed from the time the meeting is called to order until the time the meeting is adjourned. Members of the public who are attending virtually, you can raise your questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature on Zoom. Members of the public who are here in person, you can raise any questions that you have by raising your hand. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Stu Desser has volunteered to take the minutes. Thank you, Stu. We will now take attendance by roll call. The aforementioned Brian Lafferty will conduct the roll call. Brian?
Thank you. Committee members, when your name is called, please say present. I'll announce if there is quorum. Stu Desser.
Present.
Thank you. Kevin O'Keefe.
Present.
Thank you. Livia Shrednick.
Present.
Thank you. Katie Landa.
Present.
Thank you. Dave Levy. Thank you.
You can sit here.
Sandra Leptoff.
I'm here.
Thank you.
I didn't get back to your email. I did get it.
And Rabia Iqbal is not joining us this evening. So with 6 or 7 members present, we have a quorum.
Great. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. But I do propose that we start with the second agenda item first, as it may spark ideas for our discussion of 2025 priorities. If there is no objection to the agenda items and the new order, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, please raise your hand. Being no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. Now, the minutes from 2 meetings, October 22nd and December 4th, 2024, were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting these minutes, please raise your hand.
I just want to ask a trivial question on the October minutes. You started by saying members of the public spoke against this, and then you talked about the EVSA being present. Every member of the public who was there, to my knowledge, was a member of the EVSA.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know
I
that.
believe so, but they
Okay.
didn't always identify
was the
themselves
thing.
as that. So it feels sort of misleading to me. It makes it sound as if, people just randomly came. On the other hand, they are members of the public, so I don't know there's
Yeah.
a legitimate reason to.
I don't think there is, because the minutes taker, in this case, Livia, didn't know, because they didn't identify themselves as such.
Yeah.
You
I
know, you
would say
couldn't jump
3
to
of
the
them.
conclusion that they were at all.
Yeah, I think 3 of them did, and only if like one person said I'm speaking for them, and then the other 2 or 3 were like I'm a member of, and then a lot of people that spoke didn't identify that way. But I mean, if you're certain that all of them were, we can
No,
revise that.
I think because they didn't identify themselves,
Yeah.
and people are allowed to come and speak on their own.
On both
It's-
sides.
On all sides.
Are there more than 2 sides? Sorry.
Not anymore.
More.
We think about it.
It just struck me as misleading, and yet it's totally correct. So,
As a former journalism major, I think from an objectivity standpoint, I think you did the right thing, because you weren't playing with information you didn't have.
Yeah.
So that's my thought.
as a former.
Journalism professor who was broken into my brain by a professor that always be objective. When if you don't have information, don't assume that you do.
Well, that's true, but go out and collect it then, but I'm okay with this.
Okay, but that's a good point. Thanks for raising it. Okay, so those minutes have been adopted. Those minutes will be available on the CB6 website soon. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. Number one, no one may speak until granted the floor. Two, committee members who are here in person, if you have a question about committee business or you wish to make a motion, please raise your hand and I will identify you so that you may speak. Number three, committee members unable to attend in person, if you have a question about committee business, you may raise your hand through Zoom and I will identify you so you can speak. Four, all committee members, it is extremely important that only one person speak at a time so that members of the public watching at home can understand what is being said by each committee member. Number five, the chat function for committee members present via Zoom should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulty you're having or to state in writing information, such as an email address, that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. Okay, agenda item number one, status review of PATH Youth and Education Committee resolutions. Brian has these ready. What I decided, and I talked to Sandy on this as well, we're going to go back to 2022. A lot of the pre-2022 were about COVID. That doesn't necessarily apply anymore, unless I'm missing a news flash from today. So we start with, let's go from more present day, November 2024. Resolution supporting the extension of student Omni cards to all students. And of course, David and Olivia were big lifters on this reso. The Omni card allows free public transit rides for those who live outside a half-mile from school. I'm just giving some background. On removing the half-mile limit for the service, AM New York wrote in the story that actually was published on December 23rd. They happen to mention that Councilmember Power supports this request to change. Quote from the story, a NYC Department of Education spokesperson said the agency appreciates all feedback from families and school communities as they continue to review options for future access to Omni. That's a no as of now, but hopefully it can be turned into a yes. So I think it's too soon to pass any judgment on whether we need to twist any arms on this. Let's go on to June 2024, opening the 60-day rule for asylum seeking families with children. Now,
I was opposing
that was
the 60 days.
opposing the 60-day rule for asylum seeking families with children. Opposing. Give you an update on this. In late November, Mayor Adams said that the city will ease up on its 60-day shelter eviction notices for migrant families with children in the kindergarten through grade 6 to allow children to stay in the same school during the entire school year. So again, progress made on that resolution. If you
Eased up.
well,
After
yeah.
evicting them twice,
All right.
then they won't be evicted a third time. So that's still not very easy.
I'm not claiming victory by any means, but I do
Yeah.
think that there was progress.
Still,
Just he was, I think, pressured enough to do something.
Yeah, but I still think it's a dire situation for those families. And also the resolution that we passed at the last full board meeting opposed the limits for the families and individuals.
And I should know this, but Brian, was the limit, did it go beyond the 6th grade? Because this, what Mayor Adams said was up to 6th grade students. I don't know if it's on I don't have it in, well, here it is.
That I'm not certain about.
But that's another reason why potentially the reso may have not really gotten that far yet. But at least glass half full is that there has been some progress. June 2023, this was monthly reporting of data on illegal cannabis retail businesses. Last check, I don't think there's any such sign of such public data. I did see that this month, New York City Assembly, I should say New York Assembly member Linda Rosenthal introduced Bill A790 to start a real-time report of illegal cannabis stores that have closed. Okay. I want to point out that some stores close and then open again. Today, I happened to see past an illegal shop on 3rd near 27th on the west side, which is open again after it was shuttered. So to have a report about places that have closed so people can see, Also worth pointing out, a 2024 state law, you probably all saw this, that allowed municipalities to padlock illegal shops without a warrant or means of appeal was overturned as unconstitutional. I do think now that research can be done with open cannabis use, that people are, can be research subjects because it's not illegal. I think we'll see a lot more research about cannabis impact on youngsters over the next year. It was interesting, this month, actually, a Democrat in the New York State Assembly, Phil Steck, introduced Bill A1007 that would make it illegal to vape or smoke cannabis within 30 feet of any location where a child lives, attends schools, or goes for recreational purposes. This 30-foot rule would measure in a straight line, including through floors and walls and locked doors. The bill includes NIH and Mount Sinai research that shows harmful secondhand effects of on children and adults of cannabis. So just my way of saying we might want to keep that on our radar because I think we're going to see a lot more coming out. Whether I mean, personally, I've always said I'm for safe and legal cannabis, but OCM is not always acting in a way that has convinced me that that's the case. And you have other outspoken, just one more thing, Elton John was named Icon of the Year in December for Time Magazine. And in his interview, he talked about cannabis. This is his quote: "It's addictive, it leads to other drugs. Legalizing marijuana in America and Canada is one of the greatest mistakes of all time," unquote. December 2022, this was a resolution supporting implementation of Local Law 10. So Local Law 10 specifically allows the city to install stop arm cameras on school buses to identify drivers who disregard school bus stop arms and who thereby potentially put children at significant risk of harm, especially during the 8 a.m. hour on school days. Now, this was December 2022. Last year, the pilot program expanded from 30 buses to 250 buses by the city. The 30 buses were, the cameras were donated, the 250 is city budgeted. One of the city contractors claims that from its work in about 450 school districts, cameras on stop arms of school buses are known to reduce by about 40% vehicles from passing buses. So I think it's a very worthy resolution that we should stay on top of, but it has gone from 30 to 250 since this reso passed. May 2022, supporting the increase of NYPD school safety staff at PS 40, Salt School of Science, and Augustus and Godin School. I think it's worth pointing out that there's always some confusion. There are state safety agents and school crossing guards, two different things, both under the auspices of NYPD, but completely different. There's always going to be an issue with this. I hear it all the time that schools, for whatever reason, I should say NYPD, can't get people to become guards or agents. On the agent side, I should say on school crossing guards make $18 an hour plus health insurance if they put in 20 plus hours per week. And I thought, isn't there something why don't people want to be school safety agents? I'm not saying this is the reason, but I find it really interesting that candidates must pay a $75 fee up front for printing as part of the background and investigative check process. I'm sorry, but I'm coming to you, you're desperate for guards, maybe you should pay the $75 fee, NYPD. Okay, let's go on to, I think we have 2 or 3 more. May 2022.
Wait, I'm sorry, did they get the safety agents that were requested?
And there's still, oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't say that. I was not able to determine whether any of those 3 schools got them. So I don't know if we have any information. I'm just saying that I've heard from other schools, even if they did, other schools have the same issue. Was that Alex Forrest had a State of the District address, and this came up about how the school that he was, the art and design school where he was giving his speech, was actually one of those that was looking to, for more fortification. And
For this school or these schools, there was only one, school safety officer. And when that officer went on break or was distracted by some incident on the street, so this was a particularly dire situations, I understand it.
Yeah. They might all be maybe not as dire, but I think that, but no, I don't have an update. I'm sorry. I looked for one. I don't have one. And I don't know if the board office has received anything, but we can look into it. And I'd be happy to play that role. March 2022, supporting the New York State school funding parity for private schools serving children with learning challenges. I think we know 853 schools are the New York State approved private schools. It's not 853 schools. It's named that because it was created by Chapter 853 of the laws of 1976. This is where private agencies operate the schools for school day and residential students with disabilities. I did see that the 2023-24 state budget did include assistance for the 853 schools and some grants for schools focused on students with disabilities. We can get into this some more, but I know that there were some AESP issues that have kind of been cleaned up. I've heard from some parents about. Okay, that is an overview. Stu, you had some questions of the resolutions. I mean, as a committee, do we feel like we need to put pressure on some of these to have them go through? I know I'm looking at you just because.
I had questions,
No, because you're the one that had questions during the.
not just because I always talk.
Okay, I won't look at you anymore. But I will ask Brian, I mean, do other committees usually go back and re-review and say, we should probably get some traction on these?
It's been some time, I think, since committees have looked back. I do recall many years ago, transportation, looking back at previous resolutions. But aside from that, I'm not aware in recent years of any committees looking back at their resolutions.
This was actually an issue that Jesus had raised. He was concerned that we pass resolutions and then no one ever looks back to see if they were of any consequence. Which I think it's very valid, I mean, our goal should be to not just express aspirations, but to actually have an impact. And I haven't done this on my committee, so I have no business suggesting this to anyone else, but I think it would be worth community boards, committees, consulting with their counterparts at other community boards in trying to operate somewhat in concert, because the impact, I think, would be substantially greater.
That's a good point. And of course, that's happened on certain
Pretty
issues.
rarely, I think.
Not probably way too rarely, but it has happened. So it gives it more teeth, certainly, across the board.
But do the chairs, do the chairs of the committee meet? I know the president of the community board meets with all the other presidents or whatever, the chair.
Cheers.
Do the chairs of the committees do that as well? So like, does this committee, do you as chair, you're gonna meet with all the chairs of the education committee for
At other community boards in Manhattan?
Yeah,
No, that would come up at the general meeting.
I want to.
I'm sorry, what you had just mentioned, the borough chairs, the community board chairs. If there's any issues.
And also, there's not necessarily a one-to-one correspondence between committees at the different community
Oh,
boards.
no, true,
Right.
true. I was just curious, because
That's a
it
good
gets to
point.
the issue of, how you work collaboratively as opposed to individually. So I think you're saying the structure works against it and it's not that many.
Well, it puts more, impetus on the chair of each committee board who's already doing, a lot.
I'm sorry.
I'm not trying,
I didn't mean.
Sandy, if you're listening, I'm not trying to put more work on you, but that seems to be the default right now, the only fault. It is a fault to expect.
Yeah,
chair to
no,
do
that's
that.
fine, that's fine.
All right. I did want to bring up, if we can go to agenda item 2 then, unless there's anything else, discussion of youth and education community priorities for 2025. I think from an efficiency standpoint, it would be good to find issues or developments that are unique to our district or New York City or state issues. I think a lot of times, I've heard, let's do something about what the government's doing about education. It's a department. Well, I'd like to think we have other issues that are unique to our district where we don't have to go that broad. At least that's how I'd like to approach it, unless there's any pushback on that. I'll give you an example. Schoolyards, including in our district, could become accessible community spaces on weekends and after school. The city's independent budget office has just estimated it would cost $40 million a year in overtime wages. Gail Brewer is one of those that has jumped on board and said, what a great idea. There are 945 school buildings with outdoor yards in the city. 268 are already opened, at least in some part, because of another city program. That's something to me, whether we like that idea or not, is worth fighting for, that you have places like PS 116 with an open schoolyard that just sits there after hours and during the summer, although I'm sure they have camps and stuff. So that's something that I would be interested in doing. Feel free to jump in. I mean, to me, I think today's meeting is really trying to set a bit of a blueprint for the year with coming up with some issues, brainstorming, and then I don't expect any resolutions to come today, but at least we could start thinking. I brought up an executive committee, a meeting this month, the Spark typo, Kips Bay High School master plan. The master plans for Spark Kips Bay High School says it will be a public career focused, health and science focused high school, but it doesn't really go beyond what it said in its master plan. EDC said it's too early to meet on this, but I'd like to think, even though it's probably 5 years away from opening, if that, we should still be able to jump in and try to find out information before it's a fait accompli. Here's what the master plan reads. New York City Public Schools envisions a new high school facility focused on healthcare, public health, and life sciences, serving students from across the five boroughs. So again, are they already saying that we're going to take everyone like a specialized high school like Bronx Science or Stuyvesant High School? A lot of parents, of course, would love to see them have a lot smaller area to choose from. So their children can potentially have a better chance of getting in. It says the school will integrate and reinforce core instruction with career connected learning and benefit from direct agency to post-secondary schools and jobs in these in-demand fields. So again, what kind of is it? It's a career school? I guess it is. It continues. This type of learning environment prepares students with real world experiences, a strong plan for their path after high school, and a head start for where they are going. At Spark, the New York City public school system will establish a high school and a separate STEAM center, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, to provide career-connected lab spaces and targeted technical training for partner schools across the city. Well, again, it sounds like they're a little bit farther out than EDC saying, well, we really don't know what we're doing yet. I'd like to think that we could have EDC in here sooner than later, once it feels like it can talk about that. I think the community seriously needs to have input on what that high school is going to be all about. And I don't know if you've heard anything beyond what I've heard. And the question also is it going to be a specialized school, or is it not? Is it big? So it would have to go through the Shazat scores. If it was a specialized high school, it would knock out a lot of potential people from this area to get in.
What are the scores? What word did you use?
What's that?
Shazat works.
Oh, sorry. And I should always explain. That's the SAT for specialized schools. So if you're trying to get into, again, like a Bronx Science or Stuyvesant High School, the only one that doesn't take Shazat scores is LaGuardia, because it's done by auditions, correct. All the rest of the specialized high schools are score based.
Okay, got it.
Another issue, social media, Governor, and I know I brought this up in this committee before. So Governor Hochul this month is among the latest elected officials to call for a ban on student use of smartphones and smartwatches during school hours. The the mayor's already aboard. There's a lot of weight on this. I brought it up before because there's issues with kids losing sleep because of infinite scrolling. Because of these algorithms, it's just so smart. They know how to get kids intoxicated by just scrolling all night to the next video clip. Parents are very concerned, and that's why I think a lot of elected officials are coming out against its use.
Banning them at school is not gonna have any consequence on that, right?
Well, at least the school, they have dominion over the school time. They can't be in the kids' bedrooms, nor should they. So I think that's why they feel that's a place that they can have some power.
I will, my school has they just started this year a no phone, they have a no phone ban, and I don't think it works. I've been talking to my friends and they've noticed that they've had like higher screen time since it started, because what you're talking about the infinite scroll, they're not looking at it so much during the day, and so then they spend more time on it when they get home from school. And then also, like, kids are savvy and they're good at finding loopholes. And I don't know if you guys know this, but you can actually mirror your cell phone onto your computer. So we're allowed to have our computers. A lot of our work is done on computers. Sometimes we have our computers in class, and I'll see kids using their like mirrored version of their cell phone on their computer. So I think there are solutions we should look for. I don't think the phone ban is one of them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Again, I've got 3 high school children.
Yeah.
And yeah, they'll find a way, not them personally, but or maybe. But no, they definitely will. And I think it is about the sleep patterns is not because of what they're doing during school hours.
Yeah.
It's what they're doing at home.
But you bring up a good point, which is there should be the kids themselves involved. If you want to get involved in something like that, you really want to have the students themselves figuring it out, not us,
Yeah.
because
Definitely.
we're late to the
Also,
game, so to speak.
the phone ban, at least the way they did it at my school, but I think it's the similar way they're doing it in a lot of other schools, is pretty strict. And when you have something that makes students unhappy, students are gonna be more likely to look for loopholes and less likely to follow it just based on, the principle of it. Like, they're not happy that the school is doing it. And so, I have a friend who goes to Hewitt, and they have, I think, a better policy, which they just trust the kids to put their phones in their backpacks. And, they get in trouble if they're found using it, but otherwise they just trust them to take care of it on their own. And then at my school, we have these yonder pouches. You have to lock it, and when you get to school, and it's this whole thing. And they,
And who pays for the yonder pouches?
I think the school, which I think is also like,
Okay,
if
so not the student.
if the state or city was spending money on that, that's also something that would annoy me, because I think it's like $20 to $40 per pouch, and I don't know, I think it's a waste of money. But what happens is they don't check it that much anymore, and so a lot of kids aren't locking their cell phones, and it's also just, I feel annoyed because I think I have pretty good self-control, and it bothers me that they don't trust us. And also there's no they don't make a distinction for like freshmen or seniors, which I also don't like. So I think it is an issue that kids are spending too much time on their cell phones. Like, also a lot of adults are spending we're all spending too much time on our cell phones.
Yeah, totally.
But I don't like when it's done in a way that implies we don't trust students, or we don't think students can handle it. It's also not good at preparing students for life outside of school, because it means that they don't learn to have self-restraint on their own. They're just not using it because they're not allowed to use it. And I think it'd be better to teach students to have better practices.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think the real issue is the algorithms have gotten so smart that they know how to intoxicate. And adults too,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think it's gonna be an algorithm, excuse me. Situation where, what can we do to change that?
I think also there's another consideration around the aspect of children's and youth communication with their parents in case of an emergency. Like, I don't know if even schools are really set up to really handle those communications anymore, because people have their own phones.
I won't
So-
name the school, but I did get pushback. I've talked about this. This school feels that it, doesn't want the kids on the phone because they want them to be hyper focused on paying attention to what they should be doing in that time. They're gonna have adults telling them where they need to go, what exits, updated information. And they said they don't necessarily want them on board with their parents during that time. The school is responsible. They want to be in control of a serious situation. So there is gonna be pushback on that argument as well. Don't know if it's right, but it's there. So, but social media will definitely be, and I think AI tools as well. I mean, I think schools, Chancellor Banks, I remember after it was banned, AI in classrooms, was it 3 months later, he said, hey, let's bring it back because we're missing out on some real opportunities here. I think the real issues are privacy and plagiarism. I don't know if you know, as our high school representative, what you feel about some of the AI tools and whether some are not, are hurtful to the education.
Yeah, I mean, so in my English class, we do at this point a lot of in-class writing assignments, which I like because it's just pencil and paper, and I think it's a good way of making sure people aren't plagiarizing. My friends who use AI and like ChatGPT, usually it's for brainstorming. So I think that's been a helpful part. I haven't heard anything about students using it to write essays for them. I think teachers are doing a pretty good job at my school, at least, of trying to find ways to use AI that are productive and helpful. So it's encouraging use of this new technology, but just kind of expressing which ways it's acceptable and which ways it's not.
But I think privacy is a concern that if you somehow expose any information, even the name of your school in there, it could show up on a public AI. Like if you go now to the X, obviously social media platform, and there's now an AI component, Grok.
Yeah.
And you can hit Grok on anybody's profile and it will tell you all about that person. It's a little scary. I did it for myself. Like, how did they know that? None of that is in my profile, but then they kind of see that the articles that you post and such, and they come to a conclusion.
That's
It
great.
was actually, all good. It was
Yeah.
mad about that, but it's just scary. The other point is they're pulling data from everywhere. So people can potentially stalk and other really serious issues. So I think AI is another thing that will be coming up this year. I talked about IESPs. This is where thousands of students were denied special needs services. IESP, they had depended on for a long time. They can now receive those services. What had happened was there was a June 1st deadline. They never enforced a deadline of the Department of Education to sign up for this. So people they signed up before the school year. And they said, look, you missed a June 1st deadline. Like, so you're not going to get any help this year. So somebody with like speech therapy issues that may have been having these services for years, cut off. Keith Powers and others really put the hammer down on this. It's back in a way. You can now receive the services, but you must sign a document waiving your right to sue the education department. Last year, the city paid out a record $1.35 billion in special education case settlements.
Can you tell, what was that about? What did people sue for?
Don't they sue for private school tuition when the district can't provide the services?
Yeah, so the IESPs are for anybody, for
What's
private
that?
I
schools.
said it's a loaded issue then.
No, but isn't that
Yeah.
generally where the lawsuits are
Okay.
What is
happening?
the S?
Well, there are concerns about fraud as well. So just to give you a sense of where the money that they have to pay, is regarding reimbursements. One just came up, it was in, I think, Chalkbeat. A special education provider is charged with invoicing the education department $32,550 for services that a student never received after fake signatures were used. So there's a lot of this type of stuff as well.
What does IESP stand for?
I knew you were gonna ask me that. Independent, I'm gonna make it up,
I
so I
know,
don't.
independent education
it's for
program, but
kids.
I don't know what the S is.
Yeah, I mean, we can Google it in a second.
Okay.
But no, it's for kids. It could be a thing like if you have, any sort of disability where you need extra time, you can get extra time on tests. I mean, and then just not to have it for so long. And IESPs are for private schools, parochial schools, and public schools.
All right. So
The S
they-
just adds the word
they're
services.
IEP?
What's that?
I'm looking up the
What is
difference
it?
now.
Yeah,
The S, IEP are for students attending public schools, while IESP are for students attending private schools, but it stands for the same thing. It just adds the word services.
Right. And then it was the private schools that,
It's AI that told me just the
private
title.
slash parochial. Yeah.
oh, okay.
It was the private schools that did what? You started.
that missed the deadline, so.
Oh, I see.
Got kicked
So
out.
it's okay to have our cell phones out here, is that right?
Yeah.
I apologize. Oh, back.
As long as you're not scrolling
Mm,
and seeing, you know,
That's
the latest meme,
Yeah.
there you're fine. Just some of the things I'm gonna throw out, and again, this is anecdotal, but again, me talking to other parents and seeing what I've heard from my kids. Anti-bullying and mental health issues are still prevalent throughout schools where, you know, kids need to. There's too much bullying and that's where online social media too is, where kids are ostracized. Feel like loners, can be easily cut off from friends group because of some misinterpreted situation. I would say if you talk to parents, those are the two day-to-day concerns, mental health and anti-bullying.
And how are those being, or should they be addressed?
Well, that's what I have, brilliant minds, not mine, around this table to come up with something. Look, there's been a lot of things done on mental health that has not necessarily gone, and I don't give any examples, but I think we know one big one where the city spent a lot of money. But I do think that there needs to be, I sound old now, more time where they are away from screens. And I've always been a big believer in outdoor learning, for example, going out into green space and, you know, do some classes out there. I know it's hard to find in New York, but it's things like that that could be not the solution, but part of the, you know, solution of giving kids just a mental break. There's so much pressure in schools now, and even just like getting into, you know, colleges, and it's a pressure, it can be a pressure cooker, which is good in a way. You want to be able to, but what do we do for mental health? I don't know. I mean, do your school have any that you think they do well, and like giving people, making sure that mental health breaks, or making sure they're not over pressurized into.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's easy to focus on something like social media or saying, oh, no more cell phones. I think a lot of the mental health issues comes from just like there's a lot of work teenagers have, there's a lot of pressure. I think there's been a lot of talk, and like a lot of this is out of our control, I think, but just like with rate inflation, I've even noticed like people just put a lot of pressure on themselves to get like the A+, and if they get even an A-, then they feel really disappointed in themselves. Like in my school, I think is less of a pressure cooker than a lot of other places in New York. So I don't know. I think it's the amount of work. I think it's the level of stress and the focus on college. And I mean, I think social media like plays a part in it, but I also think it's a bigger issue.
I mean, to address what you're asking, I mean, that's what, you know, think, what can we do in our district? I mentioned the schoolyards is a potential good place, to, you know, reutilize that to give people more outdoor space to, you know, to utilize, get away from the homes, get away from,
If you asked me, which you didn't,
well, I am in a very roundabout way.
I mean, I think the problem is, it's not a matter of taking breaks from the pressure, it's a matter of finding ways to reduce the pressure.
Yeah.
You know, and we all suffered that in school, or many of us suffered that in school. You know, when I went to law school, before the exams, they'd bring dogs in to make us feel, you know, I mean, I didn't play with
I
them,
thought
but,
they were guard dogs.
and I thought, you know, maybe you should just make the classes more comfortable and teach more effectively and stop cold calling people, you know, there was unnecessary pressure that didn't necessarily provide education. And I think, you know, I don't think you would try any less hard. If you didn't feel the crushing pressure, you would just feel more comfortable doing it.
I also have noticed,
That's a good point.
and maybe this is social media or amount of work or both, but I think there's a lot of students who aren't getting enough sleep. And I think, I mean, the problem too is like, these are bigger issues with education than I think we can solve, but I mean, they've been tried in other places, experiments of having like 4-day weeks or, you know,
What
half a
time
day
do
on
your
Friday.
classes start?
My classes start 8:15 a.m.
Okay,
So-
well, that's the problem.
obviously.
No, that's the problem. Teenagers go to sleep later and wake up later.
Mhm.
I go to sleep early and wake up early, but when I was a teenager, it was exactly the same thing. And we know there's science behind this. Schools should not start that early, and, you know, until you're 30 or something. And that's simple, but there's a simple solution to that. Now, teachers may not want to go in later. There may be reasons that administrators don't want this to happen.
Also, working parents, not that everybody works 9 to 5, but there are, parents working, parents, especially single parents trying to get off to a job and they
That's
want to be
right.
able to get their child off to school and especially at a younger age. So there is that as well. But no, I agree with you. You're saying to get to the root of the problem instead of trying to do Band-Aid solutions
Or trying to fix something after it's.
after the fact.
Yeah.
But I do think, for me, it's just research is such an important part is to find out what's happening in our district and really gravitating to those type of issues. I do, we can even agree or disagree now. I would like to dive more in the next meeting about the use of that play space that the schools aren't using after hours and on weekends. And maybe there's places beyond, public places beyond schoolyards that can be used.
And there are actually, in the East Village, I think, there are now newer yards or facilities
Mhm.
which they close during the school day and open up afterwards, so that does happen.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I've done the research on this. There's place being locked more than being opened. I mean, you take a place like Kids Bay Plaza, if you're all familiar with that. You have to be a resident to get into their beautiful green space. For those that have been there, it's very nice. Used to be open to the public. They closed it, I think in the 80s. They said, yeah, we have a homeless problem and we don't want to deal with it, so we're gonna lock it to anybody unless they live here. So, something I fight against all the time is we need more space.
One of the things also is, closing streets. You don't need the park, but we have virtually no parks anyhow. But we don't seem to want to close streets and then kids have a sense of ownership. So,
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Maybe it was a resolution before pre-2022, unless I missed it, because there was a resolution out of this committee. Well, we talked about it a little bit. I thought there was a separate one that just said open streets. So I did talk to Sandy about this on Sunday. That I said, what's the history of just having a street in front of a school closed, at least during pickup and drop off? DOT says no to certain places. I mean, you go to the West Village and then take a walk through the West Village in the morning. I counted 3 places where the streets were closed. The situation is DOT says, well, with the River School, PS 281, you can't, those are truck routes. So you can't close them. It's about the routes. It's not about the volume of traffic. It's about what it's routed for. So places like that, no. The Salk School, the same, I can't remember what it was, but there was some. But I really love that idea. I think every school, and it's a safety issue too, where kids are coming in, they're late to school because it's 8:15 probably. And not always looking both ways. And with certain e-bikes and other, motorized scooters, there's more of a reason for them to, be at risk. But if the street's closed, DOT also says, well, great, you open a street, but who's gonna man it?
woman.
Which is a legitimate question. Well, you'd have to get
I'm sorry.
volunteers. What's that?
No, I said woman, but it's all right.
Oh,
It's all right. But
I still slip.
Yeah.
Woman it, person it.
Exactly, but I
Did I
was.
slap myself?
Better get on. I was talking not quite in front of the school. I was thinking it's a weekend and so on, or after school. We put, the points of where kids have social contact. And they have a sense of the control of within their own community, right? That gets them into the community and feel that they can do something in their own space to play, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So it wasn't only it's safe, I agree, but I would also ban bikes, but that's another issue. That you close off the street after school, whenever that is, and kids do their own thing. We don't have that anyplace that I know in our district, but maybe we do, but I've never seen it. Because cars win here, whether it's DOT or anything else, but cars win. And that's something I think we should do.
Yeah, I think I mean, in the thirties and forties, there were a lot of streets closed for that reason.
There are, yeah, but only, just when the kids are having a break, we have that here back on 22nd Street, they close the street off when kids go out during the school day or something, is that what you mean?
I'm talking about after hours. I'm thinking
Oh,
of,
yeah, that I
you
don't know.
know, up in 140th Street, Althea Gibson, you know, it said because of a closed street in front of her apartment, she started playing paddle tennis, put up a net, and then started playing tennis, and then she was the first African-American woman to win Wimbledon. Because of what she did, I attribute it to not only her hard work, but to her play street, open street
Yeah,
in front of her apartment.
yeah, that's terrific.
So I think that's good. I mean, to me, that's worthy of doing a deep dive and having somebody from the DOT explain to us what are the hurdles of getting that play area, and let's get it done.
Yeah, that would be
All
good.
right. Brian, how do we get somebody from the DOT to talk to us about, I mean, again, it doesn't have, it could just be an informational gathering of how do we, and we have a resolution out of it, but you know, these things like truck routes, like, is it okay if the trucks don't go there for an hour a day and they maybe take another street?
You might ask
Jason and Transpo, yeah. So, that's all I wanted to bring up. I mean, if anybody else has any other issues, but I did feel like this first meeting, especially with, you know, an interim chair, we should at least, tee up some things where we can really, hopefully start making some differences starting next meeting. That sounds cool.
Was thinking of a couple of things.
Yeah.
One is that I'm really interested in, New York passed a law limiting class sizes.
Mhm.
And I know that, you know, a lot of the New York City public schools have not, you know, gotten to the mandated class size yet. So I was wondering, you know, what are the barriers that are in the way of that? And is there anything that we can do to move that along?
It's a good question. I mean, because there are, like you said, I think it depends on what grade level. So there's 20 is a cap size for, well, it goes up to 26, doesn't it? 24, 26?
Yeah, I don't remember the numbers, but I know as a former teacher, so, you know, and as a student, I think class size makes a huge difference.
It definitely
in
is.
your learning experience.
It's just not enforced, is it? So it is there, we
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah,
So how do we get it enforced?
yeah.
Is that also, in a sense, isn't that the UFT have a voice in that? Because the teachers.
Yes,
the
it was
teachers want
supported by the UFT.
Right, so if you were gonna move on that, wouldn't you wanna also get the union, the teachers involved in creating its own voice? Because they would have
Yeah.
some real power.
Yeah, but I don't think that they would mind support from the community board.
Oh, I see, so you're going in that direction, I got it.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, you know,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
there anything we can do to support this?
I'm reading, because somebody sent me a text about this. It says, children in 12-1 placed in classes of 24 listed on, this is about, special needs, kids. How many seats are designated? Okay, they're asking the same thing about what's the cap size for those with special needs? Should they be different than?
Right, well, also, the Brad Lander's office did a really interesting study on, you know, moving to the class size limits and proposed also integrating students along with doing that. And, you know, one of the axes of integration is special needs, including, you know, children with special learning needs and like smaller integrated
You're talking about
classes.
mainstreaming?
Yeah,
Would you like to take on this issue as?
yeah, I'd be happy to.
I mean, that would be great for the next meeting for you to come in and
Okay.
share what you feel those hurdles are. And I would love to think that, you know, again, love having people from the city agencies. If you agree, to get somebody from the Department of
Yeah.
Education to sort of explain what it sees its challenges are.
Yeah, or even a school superintendent. I know there's a superintendent in the community education district too, who I've seen at some meetings, and he seems like a really interesting administrator. I would be interested in hearing,
That's good.
you know, what he's facing and how he thinks we might be able to
Yeah.
help.
Is class size also dependent on where we are in the city? So like our area is
Yes.
not gonna have, large classes, but Harlem will? Or,
Well,
I don't even know, if it-
That's,
whatever, all
that's
right.
one of the issues that Landers was addressing.
Yeah, so.
In
who
this
would-
study, is to really use this opportunity of lowering class size to really equalize things
Yeah,
for
that's
students,
Great.
to
Yeah.
obtain more equity for students.
So in terms of working jointly with other community boards, it would seem like this would be a real good issue to do that on.
Yes. Yeah, that would be
That's
beautiful.
great.
Yeah. So,
I did see that
Absolutely.
the school council did, what was the issue? Oh, on, specialized high school, exams. There was a recommendation that it not just be in English, and that was, rejected by, the school, advisory board.
Wow.
They said there was not a high enough percentage of those that really need it, but of course, the counter argument is, how about the kids that are, you know, really high learners and should be able to get into specialized high school in their learning, but they would prefer to have it in their native language. And I didn't know that, that test is only given in English only.
Right.
And is that a,
Yeah, it's not
Equity
really
issue.
fair. Yeah, I think it is.
yeah, I think so. It could be anyway, it could turn into it. Okay, so next up is, I believe Chair's report, which I will waive. But I will say I think it's important that we, you know, sort of, it was brought up here that we just don't assume that people and members know what IESP means, and also, I will do a better job of things that I may take for granted, like, education department abbreviations. I'll be able to explain them better. So thank you for keeping me honest. Old and new business, if any member of the committee has any old or new business, please raise your hand.
So I don't have any older new business, but
Okay.
I just wanted to point out there are a couple of questions in the queue.
Oh, and sorry I should be monitoring those too. You wanna read those?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to read it. So Kathleen Kelly was asking, I don't know, if the members of the committee might know, is it only private schools in Community Board 6 district that have play streets,
Did have one?
that have play streets?
I have to do the research. I mean, I don't know.
I'm sorry, the question is only private schools or?
Right, so is there implying, you know, that public schools in our district don't have play streets?
what do they mean by
Or is
play
there
streets?
some sort of,
I mean, closed, it could be,
Yeah.
when you say play streets, a closed street, like we were saying, maybe in the mornings, even during, or, you know, during drop off. I can't think of any in our district that have that capability, or that have that in place.
The high school on Irving Place, they seem to shut the streets.
Success.
No, the
Well,
one between
Irving,
16
She's saying on Irving Place.
On
I
Irving
think
Place.
16 to
There's a success.
17.
That's it, right?
When they,
That's the high
it's not a play street though, it's when they.
Let the
um,
kids out, right, but
right.
that's what this seems to be
Okay.
talking about. That's what Kevin's talking about, is closing it when kids are coming in or out. It's not a play street in that sense, it's a safety street.
Yeah. Then that's correct.
Okay, did not
Actually,
know that.
that's-
So,
It's right on the border, but okay, yeah.
yeah, I know. It's like, I thought is that Dan Goldman, or is that, half of the school is Dan Goldman, the other half, Jerry Nadler. Was there,
Friend Seminary, it's a private school, but they closed Rutherford Place, for the little kids.
but is that closed for the school? I always wondered, or is that just closed because the neighborhood?
I'm not sure. I just know that like for recess, they'll have the little kids, like middle schoolers, swims play there.
And I
It's
know
right
that-
by the park.
Yeah,
so.
no, I know, and some of the kids from, I know, so I mentioned Success come over there during their lunch hour
Yeah.
too.
Um,
And their
But
orange
that
ties.
goes back to the power of the private school to do it,
Yeah.
as opposed to the public school, so that's a big issue.
and then the other question, or perhaps it's more of a comment. Also from Kathleen Kelly, she says, the high school of the future is pretty consistently covered up by sidewalk scaffolding. They have no safe area or space for students outside. In great contrast, the SAE side street is shared with a private school, yet that school has the street closed off for their students.
This is a good topic. That we
Same
should
size.
research and find out. Like who has it, when has it, and I do know the scaffolding issue is also private, the Jack and Jill School near where
Yeah.
you are. It's going on forever. I know there's a lawsuit now about that scaffolding. Which has really made it hard for them to have kids there during playtime. So to me, it's about trying to be equitable about it. So everybody gets a fair shake, but, next meeting, we should put it on the agenda. I'd like to put that on the agenda for next meeting. If that's okay with everybody.
And just
Definitely.
for the record, the Jack and Jill scaffolding thing, we're also looking at in public safety because we look after it.
All right.
But it's a separate issue.
It's all about the kids. So is it youth education or is it scaffolding issue or is it kids issue? Okay. It's fine. Okay, so what we have for next meeting, and we have an agenda, we have open-
Third person?
No, there aren't any other questions,
Okay.
although,
Sorry.
perhaps maybe we should just give folks, members of the public, if you have any questions or would like to speak, if you want to raise your hand now.
But Kathleen, we will put this on the agenda. We've agreed for next time is really, and I think doing the research for what's open in our community district, what's not. And again, what hurdles do we have, and hopefully get somebody like superintendent or Department of Education representative to address this at our next meeting. And also class size.
Okay, and I have one more question. I'm sorry to do this.
Why, no, apologize.
But I was wondering how the committee would feel about maybe supporting the New York for All Act. It was proposed in 2021 and it tries to just prohibit state and local government from cooperating with ICE. And I feel that it really affects children and youth, because so many in New York are, have immigrant parents. I don't know exactly what proportion are undocumented, but I think, as the administration disengages from many of the temporary statuses out there, that there are going to be more and more undocumented people. And I think the more I just worry about the impact on children and youth of potentially having their parents detained, deported.
Thank you.
That was sort of what I was thinking of with the phones in school too, just because I have lived in Massachusetts and there were raids in New Bedford a number of years ago where students were in school and they came home from school and their parents were gone. They were picked up in an immigration raid.
Well, I think the topic, obviously, you're very sensitive, thank you, and I think that this is one of those agenda items that, I don't think we should address now. It should be on the public to give them enough advance notice for anybody to weigh in on it. I would not want to, have that discussion now, but it's an important discussion to have. And I think also the funding situation.
I was saying, I wanted to raise that
The
too.
funding getting cut off
Yeah,
for so many programs, and especially
yes.
anything that the kids are related, related. Go ahead, David, sorry.
no, I was gonna raise that also, just that it may be too soon to tell, because even when I looked up quickly now to see where things are, judges are already trying to block some of these freezes, so I think it's an issue to raise, to keep an eye on, but it might be too soon to tell what the trickle down will be to issues that concern us.
I did know that there was some portal freezing today on SNAP and Medicaid. The White House person, she did come out and say, hey, that was, not meant to be, everything is back active again. I know Chuck Schumer said, yeah, I don't believe her. So, I'm not just saying that, he tweeted about it. So that's an issue as well.
Yeah.
I mean, kids need to learn, kids need to always have a meal. And if there's any option of, I think, at least I'm speaking for myself, obviously, but you know, if kids are somehow deprived of a meal, that's a serious issue. And if any goes into that territory,
Yeah, I don't know yet.
we don't know, because especially since
Yeah.
lawsuits and.
Yeah,
But thank you for bringing it up. I think these are really important topics. But again, to also be able to show that that's also in our district, you know, New Bedford's a great example, but we want to be able to say this is happening here in our district as well. I think that's important to say it resonates here. As
It has the
opposed to-
potential to be any.
Well, if it has the potential,
Yeah, well,
unless,
there is this bill in the New York State Legislature. It was introduced in 2021.
Mhm. Yeah, these kids' futures are, you take parents away from kids. A lot of things go wrong, and I'm not talking, I'm talking emotionally, in a big way. So thank you for raising that. Any other questions? Again, Kathleen, I hope you can go back, next month's meeting, because we will be addressing this, more, what you had brought up. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Does not need a second, so, unless there's an objection, we'll adjourn the meeting at 7:33 PM. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
A minute taker.